So what if an ancient epic poem wasn't just a story, but like a hidden blueprint for some seriously advanced technology? Today, we're going to dive deep into the Ramayana, but we're looking at it through the eyes of an aeronautical engineer. We're going to see if those ancient flying machines could have actually worked.
And that really brings us to the big question, right? Are the flying chariots, the Vimanas that you read about in these ancient texts, are they just beautiful poetic myths? Or could they be detailed technical manuals for technology that was literally thousands of years ahead of its time?
Okay, so the whole basis for this explainer comes from this really fascinating analysis by an aeronautical engineer. What they did was apply modern scientific principles to decode the descriptions of these Vimanas, looking at two key texts, the Ramayana and the Vimana Shastra. I mean, it gives us such a unique lens to look at these ancient stories, right?
All right, so first things first, let's tackle the fundamentals. How in the world did these machines supposedly get off the ground and fly around? Because the capabilities described in the texts are, well, they're frankly mind-boggling.
I mean, just take a look at this comparison. You know, our modern aircraft are super specialized. We've got planes for the sky, rockets for space, and they don't really mix. But according to this analysis, a single Vimana could do it all. It was this multi-purpose vehicle that could cruise in the atmosphere and zip through space. It could even transform its shape mid-flight and take off vertically without needing a runway. We're talking about an absolutely incredible level of versatility.
And this isn't just some vague general idea. Now, the texts get super specific. Get this quote from the Vimana Shastra. It describes a mechanism for folding the wings in the middle of a flight. That's an incredibly advanced concept, even for engineers working today.
Okay, and here's where it gets really detailed. The source breaks down this clear, step-by-step process. So the pilot sees danger, they operate a switch, the seventh switch to be exact, and this device called an Agnapa Samhara Yantra contracts the wings. Then a different switch expands them again. I mean, you have to admit, this reads less like a myth and a lot more like an operator's manual. Okay, so if adaptable wings weren't vast enough for you, hold on. The next part of this analysis basically takes us straight into the realm of science fiction. We're talking deception and defense systems, including claims of actual, honest-to-goodness invisibility.
So, the texts describe what the source calls invisibility technology. The actual term they use is about achieving a sky-like appearance, and what that really means is an advanced form of active camouflage, a way to make the entire craft just blend in perfectly with the sky.
And this is the wild part. The text provides what sounds almost exactly like a chemical recipe. It says, you mix a solution with black mica, you coat the Vimana's body with it, and then you expose it to the sun's rays. And the result? The craft just disappears. The engineer's analysis suggests this could literally be describing a chemical reaction that creates a perfect sky blue camouflage. But it didn't just stop at camouflage. Oh no. The source interprets other passages as describing what we'd call holographic projection. Apparently, a Vimana could project images of things like lions, tigers, or even mountains to completely confuse an enemy. There was even another technique that could project an image of a beautiful heavenly damsel to, lure enemy pilots into a trap. I mean, this is deception on a whole other level.
And these defense systems could also be pretty offensive. Listen to this quote. It describes a weapon that didn't destroy the enemy craft, but instead incapacitated the crew with poison powders that would cause a coma. That is a chillingly specific description of a non-lethal, targeted weapon system.
So this really gets to the heart of the whole technical interpretation. The source concludes that these passages aren't just allegories for battle, they're detailed descriptions of real, tangible, advanced weaponry. Everything from chemical agents that cause comas to projectile weapons that sound an awful lot like ancient missiles.
Okay, now all of this sounds incredible, right? But it's one thing to interpret a text, it's a whole other thing to prove it. And the analysis we're looking at didn't stop there. They actually tried to reverse engineer the blueprints to see if these things could have worked.
So, using diagrams straight from the Vimana Shastra, the engineer created a 3D model of something called the Shakuna Vimana. The design is basically a massive ornithopter. That's a craft that flies by flapping its wings, and it has all those features we talked about. Multiple layers of extendable wings, vertical takeoff, the whole deal. But here is the most stunning claim from the entire analysis. A computational fluid dynamics simulation, a CFD, of the model apparently gave results that were comparable to a modern advanced aerospace vehicle. The analysis even pulls out some concrete performance data. by tracking the famous journey of the Pushpaka Vimana from Lanka to Ayodhya. Just as it's described in the Ramayana, the source calculated its speed, and it comes out to a pretty respectable 440 kilometers per hour.
And this is really the climax of the whole technological argument. The source claims that internal testing of a physical prototype was actually conducted, and the results? They apparently proved the design was a completely aerodynamic viable structure. I mean, that assertion is just breathtaking. The idea that these ancient blueprints, when you reconstruct them today, create a machine that can actually fly.
But just when you think you've got a handle on the core argument, the source throws in a complete narrative twist. It suggests there's another, entirely different way to read these exact same texts.
This quote here really opens the door to a whole second layer of meaning. The idea is that these texts are actually coded, that they're not just about external technology, but that they're a map of our own internal world. From this point of view, the Ramayana is a story that's happening inside every single one of us.
And this comparison chart really makes the two possible meanings crystal clear. So in the technological reading, the Pushpaka Vimana is a physical flying machine. Simple. But in the symbolic reading, it becomes the ethereal plane you use to ascend your consciousness. The kingdom of Lanka is no longer a place, it's a metaphor for the mortal body. And the 10-headed king Ravana, he's not a monster. He represents the ego with its 10 evil qualities. All of a sudden, Rama's journey is completely transformed. It becomes the soul's quest to overcome that ego and reconnect with the true self.
So, where does that leave us? Are we looking at a technical blueprint for an advanced aircraft or a profound spiritual allegory for the human condition? The source suggests that maybe it could be both, that these ancient texts were encoded with multiple layers of knowledge, physical and metaphysical. And that leaves us with one final big question. When ancient myth and modern science intersect like this, what are we truly seeing? A reflection of a forgotten past? Or maybe just a reflection of ourselves?